All right, we are now streaming on YouTube. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to BLAW Live. This is Bishop Larry Ward, and we call it BLAW Live because it's Bishop Larry Ward Live. And we're so thankful to be here on Tuesday evening. And we actually do these number of interviews and we talk about topics because we want to encourage you, we want to inspire you, and also want to give you some tips on how to live life better. And so we just want to thank you for supporting and being a part of BLAW Live every Tuesday night. If you like what we're doing, just please subscribe to our channel. Also, you can tune in to Abundant Life Church at alccambridge.org. Tonight, sitting to my left, and as you're looking at your right, is Reverend Dr. Virginia Ward, my wife. And we're going to talk about mothers. Mother's Day is approaching on Sunday, and we celebrate moms and we celebrate women. We are so blessed to be able to celebrate Mother's Day, and we've always celebrated Mother's Day, and we do a pretty big thing at our home when it comes to mothers. And we're here to really help and share some things, just kind of talking about mothers and some things that we can offer you tonight, being that we've come through such a disruption in the midst of COVID. And I'm sure that many of the mothers tonight, they could use some encouragement as we're coming through, hopefully in a not too distant future, the end of it all. And so thank you for joining me.
You're welcome.
For being here. It's good. Want to ask you a question about your mother. Your mother. Your mother being a single parent, raising 4 children. And basically she did really well. She passed away at a fairly young age. So talk about your mother.
Okay. So my mother raised 4 children. So actually, let me rewind. My parents were married, and then Dad was a pastor for many years, and they divorced during our junior high school days. And so my mother raised 4 children from junior high on up. I have a twin sister, a sister that's 18 months after my twin and I, and then we have a brother who's 10 years after us. So my mother at that space we were living in an apartment, but then she bought a house in the suburbs and raised 4 children. She's first generation, actually she's second generation. My grandparents were first generation from Barbados. So my mother was second generation, but born in the US. And so she had a lot of West Indian, for lack of a better word, Caribbean habits. So she was very strict. She was an educator. She got her master's degree in education and taught in the Boston public school system. And she was just really on top of education. So she raised us in a home where we had to study. There was no TV in our bedroom, no TV during the week. We went to church. Even though our parents divorced, she was still active and kept us very active in church. She was one who instilled in us and really taught me as the oldest, even though I'm a twin, I was considered the oldest, as it were. And I was the first to get a job and the first to really branch out and want to do things on my own. And when I got a job, she would meet me on payday and take half of my paycheck. And she taught me about saving money. And she made sure that I bought my own groceries. At 16 years old, I was buying my own food, bought my own clothes. So she really instilled in me a lot of independent behaviors, really instilled in me. I didn't like it back then. I didn't realize what she was doing. But now I'm glad that she did, because I believe I am the leader who I am today, partially because my mother was so strict. She didn't let us date either. My first date was my senior prom. And so she kept a tight rein on all 4 of us. But she was also a very likable woman. She loved, when she became a Christian, she wanted everybody to know about Jesus. So she was an evangelist, and she literally went to Bible school and got a certificate in evangelism and would share Christ. She was very instrumental in starting, actually, St. Paul AME Church. That's where she went. They had a bookstore, and she was very instrumental in starting that bookstore at St. Paul AME Church in Cambridge. So I remember my mother being a very active woman, very around the home. She kept a neat house. We couldn't have a messy room. We had to make our bed up. We had to keep our clothes hung up. And as girls, this is another thing about my mom. She took us shopping. So every 2 weeks, she gave us an allowance and she took us shopping. And she said, these are the staples that a young woman should have in her wardrobe. And so that could be part of my love for shopping. My mother really, and she said, a woman should look like a woman. And I just remember that our hair was always done every 2 weeks, every Saturday, on Saturday nights, she would press our hair. And she had 3 girls that she was hot comb on the stove. For those of you that understand black hair, hot comb on the stove, and she'd press that hair out on Saturday, and we had to keep it clean. So yeah, I know I just went on a long space there, but my mother was a very strong Black woman, in Caribbean, I should say, Caribbean American woman. And I really appreciate that, what she deposited in me.
Yeah, she was kind of the person where, as my wife said, she didn't let her daughters date until they were how old?
18. Senior
prom. So by the time senior prom came along, I came along right after that point.
Mm-hmm.
But the vetting process was scathing. The vetting process was scathing.
Mm-hmm.
So many times when it comes to parents,
mm-hmm.
and especially single moms,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot of work. It's
Yes.
a lot of energy
Yeah.
when you have children
Mm-hmm.
to raise, especially 4 children.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
it was not, and I know that we're living in a lot of different times now,
Mm-hmm.
but the work is the work.
The work is the work.
Work is the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so
mm-hmm.
one of the reasons I asked you that question, because what moms do
mm-hmm.
for their children kind of really creates who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and models who they are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I can remember your mother was always very, it was very important on how she looked.
Yes, she did.
She took a lot of pride in how she looked.
Yes, she did.
She didn't want to look like she had 4 children.
Right.
And they were just kind of just pulling her to pieces.
Right.
She always tried to keep herself
always
very much together.
She was in shape. Her hair was done. Her clothes were done. So some of you may be wondering, where did I get that from? My mother, school teacher, but just hair, body. She was just, she really cared about her appearance and made sure that we cared about our appearance as well as young women. And then my brother came along also. So yeah.
So the next question is,
mm-hmm.
When it comes to the values that your mother poured into you,
mm-hmm.
okay, particularly, she had a career,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and she had to take care of her kids,
yeah.
and she managed to purchase her own home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What did that do for you as a young woman
mm-hmm.
in your, as you're getting out on your own?
Mm-hmm.
What did that say to you?
Mm-hmm. Well, it said to me that the sky was the limit. So my mother always taught us as young women that we could do anything. And so she took us, I remember when we went house hunting, she took us house hunting with her, and she knew what she wanted. Back then you had the newspaper and you circled homes that you wanted to go see. And so she was very clear and detailed about what she wanted and what she didn't want. She wasn't afraid to say yes or no. She did her homework, her research for things. And it showed me that as a woman, she went back to school with kids. We were in school when she was going back for her master's degree. And so it also showed me she wasn't afraid of hard work. My mother was not afraid to work hard. She worked hard at school. She worked hard at home. She took us to school with her sometimes. We helped to teach vacation Bible school with her. So she wasn't only active on her job and her vocation, but she also gave time to ministry, not as a pastor's wife, because at that point, my parents weren't married, but she gave time at church and made sure we as kids did the same. She also taught us responsibility. And that's the other piece that she instilled in us. If you do something, you're responsible for it. You don't pass it off to somebody else. You don't drop the ball. You make sure that that's handled. And so my mother instilled that within me, that work ethic. And that's something I feel it's something you don't think about when you're a kid. You're going, oh, why I got to do this. She didn't let us quit. She really, really did. No, you're going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to like it. Our tears didn't matter. Our pain didn't matter. She's like, you're going to finish this. You're going to do this. We all had chores and responsibilities around the house. We all felt and we all knew this was our house. And even though she would say at times, it's my roof, my house, she also made us feel like this was our house. And so we took ownership and responsibility for that. And I'm really grateful for that.
Wow. And in the process of that, I know there were some real tough decisions that your mom had to make. Okay. As you stated in the beginning that, your dad was there, but now they parted ways and they divorced. And so life was not always perfect. Mom, the relationship between your mom and dad was not perfect at all. And some people think that because you might have a perfect scenario, that's the only way things can go well. But everybody doesn't have the perfect scenario all the time. And even if you have 2-parent homes, it can be some rough going with that too. So think if you can kind of go to a moment and talk about maybe a tough decision that your mom had to really make, a really tough decision that affected you that she had to make. What might that have been?
The one that comes to mind is so she had, at one point, my mother had 3 of us in college. So my twin sister, myself, and actually my younger sister was about to go into college. And at that time, as now, you fill out the financial aid forms. And she was like, I can't do this for all 3 of you. And so she said to me, I can't sign any more financial aid forms. She couldn't take any more loan debt on. And so she said, well, I can't help you right now. And so she's like, you're going to have to figure out your education because I can't do anymore. And that was a tough decision because she was paying mortgage. She was paying for the car. She had 4 kids, single parent. And looking back now, I'm like, wow, my mom really did a lot. I didn't understand the load that she was carrying. And I know I was a little resentful about that for a while, but I didn't realize she was keeping a roof over my head. She was keeping food and making sure that we were cared for. And so she had to make that trade-off of, do I keep signing loans for 3 kids now? Or do the oldest one, you'll make your way. And that's what she would say, you'll make your way. And before she passed, we were sitting in the emergency room because my younger sister had a medical situation that was going on. And I would say to my mother, why did you make me work so hard? Why did you? And she's like, I knew you would make your way. I knew you were strong and I knew you would make your way. And it was like, wow, hearing my mother say that, it was kind of like, oh, okay. It was actually cathartic for me. It helped me to release a lot of things that I was holding. But that was a really tough decision. And sometimes as a single mom, and even as you said, with 2 parents, as a mother, you have to make some tough decisions. And I'm sure it wasn't easy for her to come to me and say, I can't afford to pay for your education anymore. Figure it out. And so, I did figure it out. Praise God. The Lord helped me. But, and I'm sure her prayers were there as well. But that was a tough situation. I do remember that. And that was a tough decision.
Wow. So although the tough decision was made that she couldn't take care of all of your expenses for an education, everybody did pretty well.
Everybody fared well. Everybody graduated from college. 2 of us have masters. And so we did well.
Yeah. That you made it, but it wasn't the straight, let's just go to 4-year college.
Right.
Get a master's, get a doctorate degree. It took a lot of time to pace that out because your family expenses couldn't go any higher than what you make.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
So tell a parent who's maybe watching where they're really having a tough time making a decision like that because maybe they didn't have the opportunity because expenses were too high or they just didn't have the resources to do it, but they want better for their child.
Right.
What would you say to a mother, or whether they're 2-parent home, single parent home? What would you tell them when it comes to making those kind of hard decisions?
Well, I would say that definitely pray. If you're a Christian, definitely pray about it. And when the decision is made, have that honest conversation with your child, regardless of their age. If they might be high school going into college, they might be younger, but to have the conversation and explain. And even times we had to have some tough conversations with the boys to say, we can do this and we can't do that. I would encourage you as a parent to say, when you make the decision, it's going to be tough. You're going to wrestle with it, but you've got to do what's best for the family unit. And it may not necessarily be the best for that one particular child, but you have to consider all of the other children. And that's one thing I will say, even though every family unit feels like there's a favorite child, and every parent may feel like there's a favorite child that kind of gets at their heart. Yeah. My mother was kind of like, okay, all of you all are in this space. She took us all shopping. She gave us all allowance. And we did the same with the boys. We blessed both of them and made sure that they both had the sneakers and the clothing that they need. So I would say as a parent, if you do have that favorite child, try not to show it and exalt that child, almost like with Joseph and his brothers. Don't do that. Try to love all of your children equally. But when you make that tough decision, have the conversation as a family and then pray about it with the family and stick to it. Don't keep waffling back and forth. When my mother made the decision, she stuck to it. And it was like, I may not have liked it then, but I'm grateful for it. It made me tougher. It made me stronger. It made me resourceful. And who knows what resources may come out of that, but you have to make the decision and then stick to the decision.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you for joining us. And those of you who just came on, or if you came on a little while ago, this is BLAW Live, Bishop Larry Ward, and I'm here with my wife, Reverend Dr. Virginia Ward, and we're just talking about mothers. Mm-hmm. And if you are on tonight and you're watching live, we'd like you to ask a question. You can toss it out. And we got about 15 minutes, so we got a very short window to answer your questions. And so we're just delighted that we can be part of this time with you and see what your questions are. So I think we got a question here. What do you think?
Okay, great question. A single mother thinking about going back to school, but feels obligated to wait for my kids to get out of school. What's your advice? Great question. Well, again, I would go back to, I think you need to pray about it and see, because timing is important. Now, for us, I waited until the kids were college age. They were out of high school, some high school, a little bit of high school, college.
Well, I think when it comes to college, mm-hmm. If we're talking about baccalaureate program, then we're talking about master's program, then we're talking about doctoral program. Mm-hmm. They were definitely in school. Yeah, they were definitely in school. And I was actually in school with.
We were all in school at the same time.
Because I just got my bachelor's, degree as the kids were going to school as well. Mm-hmm. So we were all in school. We were all working at the kitchen table and everything else.
So I would say, I think you have to look at your support systems. And this is what I think where Bishop was going with this is look at your support systems. Do you have people? So if the kids have after school programs, who's going to help them with their homework? If they're involved in sports and other activities, who's going to help there? So I would say, one, start with your support network and see, is it in place? Two, I would look at the ages of your kids and say, what's the trade-off? If you go to school right now, it's not necessarily about waiting for the kids. I think you have to determine what's the best timetable. So for us, as Bishop just said, we were all in school at one point at the same time. We had printers running and printing papers all over the place. I was like, whose paper is this? So it was something where I did alongside of with the kids, because I did undergrad, then grad work, and then went on and did doctoral program. So it's been quite a number of years while I was in that journey. So I would encourage you to pause and just assess the whole situation. What's your support network? Two, financially, if you have to take out loans, how are you going to pay for this? And maybe that may help your kids when it comes time for them to get loans or time for them to go to school. But it may also hinder it, because there's an expected family contribution that you'll have to pay for each child. I would also encourage you, look at the talents of your kids, because maybe they might get a full ride or scholarships to school. There's still plenty of money out there. Don't let people tell you there isn't. There's plenty of money out there, plenty of scholarships out there. So maybe your kids will have their way paid. So that just doubles back to all of that, is what is your support network? And then what is it you're trying to go back to school for? Is it a 2-year window? Is it a 1-year window? Is it a 3-year window? So I think you have to map the whole thing out and then have the conversation with your kids and say, look, mommy's going to go to school too. And this is what this means. We're going to have to sacrifice some. So while I was in school, I didn't shop a lot. I sewed, made my clothes, made clothes for the boys. We drove one car. You got to look at what the sacrifices are of that financially. But keep in mind that if it's a 1 or 2 year program, that might push you ahead and it might position you. So if your kids are younger, it might position you nicely when they do get older. You might make a little bit more money and have more to contribute to their education. So I would say sit down and even talk with someone else and help them map it out. And because we know plenty of single moms who've gone to school while their kids were small and they've done well. And so don't let that hinder you, but just sit down, map it out, pray about it, talk with your family, assess your support network, and hopefully that's a blessing to you.
That's really good. And nowadays, as we're in this whole virtual platform, you know, there's so many different ways by which you can participate in classes and get the education that you need. You don't always have to go to a brick and mortar. You can actually do it online. We didn't do a whole lot online. I think I did a few courses online as you know, started to go for my second master's program or whatever it was. We actually started to do a little bit more online, but in the beginning it was like you got to go and get yourself into the classroom, sit down, do the homework. But it can be done. That's the main thing. It can be done. You could find ways to get your education or get your degrees or get your credentials, however that works for you. It'll just be certainly some hard work and a work in progress. Okay. So we have a couple other questions. So we're going to kind of speed along here.
Okay. It says, I'm a mother and a businesswoman and always felt like I'm going 24/7. Do you have advice how I can find some me time? Oh, yes, I give all to my business and to my kids, and I feel I need to get more grounded spiritually. Great question. So, Mama, I would say to you what they tell us when we get on a plane. You have to put the mask on yourself first. So what I would say is, I think, and I just had this conversation with someone early, actually 2 people earlier today I had this conversation with. I would encourage you to pause and take a look at your schedule. And the way that you can really do that, not just say, oh, this is what I think my schedule is. I would encourage you to take a 2-week assessment. So beginning today, and then go 2 weeks from today to write down at the end of each night, write down what you did actually with your day, what you actually did with your time. And then I want you to look at that and say, what can I cut here? Because there's something that you can cut that you don't have to do right now. And it might just be an hour a day. It might be a half an hour. It might be half a day, but you've got to find some margin. You're going to have to, as I've heard it say, make time for you. So you can't give all to your kids and to your business because you're going to run dry and eventually you're going to burn out. You're heading towards burnout. So I would encourage you to look at pacing yourself and then figure out what you can do. And maybe when you remove something, you say, okay, what can I do to ground myself spiritually? Maybe you need to get into connect with a group of Christian women that are going to help you and hold you accountable to grow. That's something we've been talking about, and you'll hear more about this. This is actually the next phase at Abundant Life, where we're going to get our discipleship life groups going again, where you can connect. That's something that I feel passionate about. I actually want to work and have a group of women that are leaders, women leaders that I want to be pouring into and having consistent contact with them, helping to share some of the things that I've learned over the years. So I would encourage you to make time. If you can only take 5 or 10 minutes in the morning. For me, it was bathroom time. When the boys were small, I knew I could go in the bathroom and lock that door, and that was my 10 minutes. And they'd knock on the door, mommy, mommy, and I had to condition them, nope, this is mommy time. Then also he would give me one night a week. He would give me time to be with, either go to the mall by myself or hang out with my friends one night a week. You have to make the time. The time isn't there. You're going to have to find it and then make it. And then third, protect it. Even now, I have to protect my time. There are people that will call me and, oh, I want you to do this. And can you be a part of this? And, oh, we need you for this. And everybody always needs something. but it's like, I will run dry if I don't pause. I can't be everything to everybody. I have to put the mask on myself. That includes praying. Bishop will tell you my worship time around the house. Sometimes I'm really loud. Other times I go on prayer walks. I make the time. And I've got a full schedule. So I want to encourage you, make the time and connect with other women, especially other moms that can pour into you and that can call you out on stuff and that can pray with you and laugh with you and cry with you. So I want to encourage you on that, to make time for yourself. Okay. Make time for yourself. And hopefully that helped you there, and connecting with God individually and then collectively.
So here's the next question. And we only got about 5 minutes to kind of do this one. So here's the next question.
So it says, I'm having a hard time with my teenage daughter who seems to be straying away from God. How can I talk to her about her faith without it ending in an argument? Signing, a struggling mother. All right, struggling mother.
Everybody's struggling on that one.
Struggling
struggling on that one.
So Mama, let me help you, my sister. Let me help you. So kids go through, if they're a teenager, they're now finding their own faith. This is a good thing. So I don't want you to see it as, oh, they're walking away from God. She's actually on a journey to find her faith. The best thing you can do, the worst thing you can do, I should say, is to force your faith on your daughter. Because, and that's a son or daughter, if you try to force your faith on your child, they will not only hate you, they will hate God. You don't want that to happen. So I would encourage you to pray, and pray. I'm gonna say it one more time, pray. Pray for your child, but then also ask her, is there anything I can pray with you about? Have the conversation and say, I love Jesus. Here's my faith journey. This is how I came to faith. This is why I love Jesus. And have that conversation and then say, you know what? I recognize you need to find your journey. You need to find your faith journey. And so you can say things like, well, in my house, we're going to go to church. I want to ask of you to come to church with me or to watch church online with me. And then we can talk about faith. But I want to help you to the degree that I can to find your own faith journey. It is not your responsibility to force them to Christ. It is your responsibility to teach them about Christ. And if you've done that, she's got to make her way. And eventually she will not depart from the things that you've planted in her. You don't want to argue. You don't want to argue about, oh, you need to come to church, you need Jesus, because her faith is her faith. And during the teenage years, they will question, they will doubt. It may feel like the world is pulling and her friends are pulling, but you have to trust what you've put in her. And then again, I want to say pray. Both of our kids went through that faith journey. And as pastors, it was hard because it's like, I was a youth leader. And it's like, my kid doesn't want to go to youth group, but I'm the youth leader. And it was like, we had to have the conversation, said, okay, I'm taking off my youth leader hat. I'm putting on my mommy hat right now. I want you to know Jesus, but you got to want to know Jesus. And now both of our kids, they know Jesus and they're making their way in their faith, but they're making their faith their own. And they say things to us, and when we hang out with them and talk with them, they're praying and we're like, whoa, whose kid is that? They will surprise you. But you don't want to argue with your child. You don't want to argue with them, but you do want to have the faith conversation with them and be the guide along the side in this space. They don't need you to be the teacher as much. When they start moving into those teen years, you need to be the guide along the side and pray and watch what God will do when you pray for your child and pray with that child. So hopefully that helped. Struggling mom, I don't want you to argue. I don't want you to fight with your child, but continue to speak the word, pray. And if they don't want to pray with you, you pray for them and drop them notes. Ask the Holy Spirit, how can I help my child in this spiritual journey? But ultimately understand they have to own their own faith, just like you did.
Yeah, and I think it's also important that you model and be consistent about your own spiritual life. You can't make anybody become a disciple. The person has to be willing to follow the Lord and the Lord's commandments themselves and follow and have a relationship with Jesus. But you as an individual, you want to make sure that you're consistently
Yes.
following Christ,
Mhm.
because they're watching you. At the end of the day,
Yes,
they don't see Jesus standing, in your household actually doing things
Mhm.
physically.
Mhm.
They're going to see Jesus through you.
Mhm.
And so as you're starting to talk with them and starting to work with them and help to deal with your own problems and
Mhm.
situations, they see how you go through tough decisions that you have to make, and
Right.
they see you undergoing a lot of pressure at times, and how you handle it with the
Mhm.
word and how you handle it with prayer.
Mhm.
That is a lesson in itself, because I
Mhm.
remember my own parents,
Yep.
the
Yep.
tough decisions and things that they had to go through with
Mhm.
with ministry and raising us. That was an example to me on how faith actually works in real life.
Mhm.
So
Mhm. Mhm.
I would say that is a very important
Mhm.
piece of it.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing, that our kids are in their 30s now, and they are now coming back to share lessons with us to say, Ma, Dad, I'm really grateful for this. You said this, I didn't understand it, or I didn't like it, but now I'm understanding. And now they're praying and hearing from God on their own. So I want to encourage you to trust that you are planting good seeds in that soil. You may not see it now. Give it a chance to grow. Keep watering it with prayer.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I pray that this was a blessing to you. Thank you so much for being a part of BLAW Live and joining us on Tuesday evening. And thank you so much for being with us. And so, again, if you like what you're hearing, if it's been a blessing, you share it with someone. Also subscribe to our channel as well. On Sunday, don't miss Abundant Life Church's live worship experience on Mother's Day. Pastor Virginia is going to be speaking a word, as she always preaches on Mother's Day and gives us a word, and have been doing such a phenomenal job year after year. And so she has a word for all of us on Sunday morning. So we don't want you to miss it at 10 o'clock. Be with us. So God bless you. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord cause his face to shine upon you. May the Lord be gracious to you and give you his shalom, his peace, nothing missing, nothing broken.